My daughter keeps accidentally breaking things I got from my new girlfriend. I thought my daughter was just acting out because she missed her mom, but then I found the box of broken things she'd been hiding, and I realized the truth was so much more heartbreaking. Hey everyone, before we get into the video, don't forget to subscribe and smash that like button if you want more stories just like this. Thanks for the support. My name is David and I'm 42 years old. For 2 years, the silence in my house was the only constant. It was a heavy, suffocating silence that followed me from room to room, a reminder of the vibrant, chaotic life that had been stolen from us. My wife, Anna, had been the sun in our little solar system, and when she was gone, the planets, my daughter, Lily, and I, had drifted into a cold, dark orbit. We existed, but we didn't live. Then Clara came into my life. She was like a gentle, persistent light, not trying to replace the sun, but to show us that there were other stars in the universe. She was kind, funny, and had a way of making Lily smile that I hadn't seen in what felt like a lifetime. Slowly, cautiously, I started to let her in. I started to let her things in, too. A small ceramic vase for the kitchen counter, a framed print for the living room, a soft knitted throw for the sofa. Each new object felt like a small step towards healing, a quiet declaration that we were ready to move forward. Lily seemed to accept that at first, her preteen demeanor softening into something resembling contentment. But then the accidents began. It started small, a chipped edge on the ceramic vase, which I attributed to her being clumsy, a kid just being a kid. I didn't think much of it. I was just so happy to see a hint of life returning to our home that I overlooked the tiny cracks forming not just in my ceramics, but in the fragile piece we were building. I told myself I was being paranoid, that a single father with a grieving daughter was bound to see shadows where there were none. But the shadows kept appearing, one small chip at a time. The pattern became impossible to ignore. It wasn't just the vase anymore. A week later, the framed print from Clara, a beautiful watercolor of a forest, was found face down on the floor, the glass cracked in a spider web of lines. Lily had been in the room, reading a book, when I heard the thud. She looked up, her eyes wide with what seemed like genuine shock. "It just slipped," she mumbled, her voice barely audible. I cleaned up the mess, my heart sinking. Slipped was becoming a very common word in our house. Then it was Clara's knitted throw. It was a beautiful, cream-colored thing, and one evening I found it torn, a small, deliberate-looking hole in the middle. I didn't ask Lily about it. I already knew what she would say. I started to watch her, really watch her when she was near Clara's things. I saw the way her eyes would linger, the subtle, almost imperceptible flinch when her hand got too close to a new object. It wasn't the clumsy fumbling of an accident-prone child. It was something else. It was a look of resentment? No, that wasn't the right word. It was deeper, more complex. It was a look of someone trying to protect something, to preserve a memory by destroying the thing that threatened to overwrite it. I tried to talk to her, a quiet conversation in her room one night. "Lily, is everything okay? You seem distracted lately." She hugged her knees to her chest, staring at the floor. "I'm fine, Dad." The words were flat, devoid of their usual teenage sass. "Are you sure? You know you can tell me anything." She looked up then, her eyes red-rimmed. "I just miss Mom, that's all." And in that moment, I felt a wave of guilt so powerful it nearly knocked me over. Of course she missed her mom. How could I have been so blind? I pulled her into a hug, the familiar scent of her shampoo a painful comfort. "I miss her too, baby, more than you know." I decided then that I was being silly. These were just accidents. Grief made people clumsy. It made them act out. I was just looking for a problem that wasn't there, a way to sabotage my own happiness because I felt like I didn't deserve it. I told myself to be more patient, more understanding. I would talk to Clara, explain that Lily was still processing everything. I would be the perfect, supportive partner and father. I would fix this. The breaking point came on a Saturday afternoon. Clara had brought over a beautiful antique music box. It was a gift from her grandmother, a delicate wooden thing that played a soft, tinkling melody. It was the most precious thing she had ever brought into our home, and I could see the pride and care in her eyes as she placed it on the mantelpiece. "Isn't it lovely?" she had asked, her voice full of warmth. "It reminds me of my childhood." I had agreed, telling her it was perfect. Later that day, I heard a crash from the living room. A sound so final, so destructive, that my blood ran cold. I rushed in to find Lily standing frozen, the music box in a dozen pieces on the hearth. The tiny ballerina was twisted and broken, the melody forever silenced. Clara was right behind me, her face a mask of shock and hurt. "What happened?" she whispered, her voice trembling. I looked at Lily, who was staring at the wreckage, her face pale and blank. "Lily?" I said, my voice tight. "What happened?" She didn't answer. She just stood there, her eyes fixed on the broken wood. I don't know," she finally said, her voice small and hollow. I tripped." "Tripped?" Clara repeated, her voice cracking. "You tripped and sent it flying 10 feet across the room?" The accusation hung in the air, sharp and painful. I could see the hurt in Clara's eyes, the doubt. I turned back to my daughter, my own anger and confusion warring with a deep paternal instinct to protect her. "Lily, this isn't funny. Tell me the truth." She looked at me then, and for the first time, I saw something in her eyes that wasn't just sadness or grief. It was defiance. A hard, cold defiance that I had never seen before. "I told you," she said, her voice gaining a dangerous edge. "I tripped." That was when I knew. This wasn't an accident. This was deliberate. And as Clara's hurt turned to anger and my own confusion curdled into a cold rage, I realized I was losing control of everything I had been so carefully trying to rebuild. The silence in the house after that was different. It was heavier, more charged. Clara had left, her eyes red with unshed tears, after I had failed to offer any reasonable explanation for the accident. I had tried to defend Lily, to say she was just upset, but the evidence was damning, and my own heart wasn't in it. I was angry. I was hurt. I felt betrayed by my own daughter. For the next 2 days, Lily and I existed in a state of Cold War. She stayed in her room. I stayed in mine. The only sounds were the occasional shuffle of feet and the hum of the refrigerator. On the 3rd day, driven by a desperate need to understand, I decided to search her room. Not to punish her, but to find a reason. I wasn't sure what I was looking for, but I had to know. I started with her desk, going through her school books and drawings. Most of it was typical preteen stuff. Sketches of horses, notes from friends, a half-finished comic book. Then, tucked away in the back of her drawer, I found it. A small cardboard box, plain and unmarked. My heart hammered in my chest as I opened it. Inside, carefully wrapped in tissue paper, were the broken pieces of everything Clara had brought into our home. The chipped vase, the cracked picture frame, the torn throw. And, at the very bottom, the shattered remains of the music box. Each item was there, a grim collection of her accidents. But it wasn't just the broken things. Underneath them, there was a folded piece of paper, worn and creased. I unfolded it, my hands shaking. It was a drawing, a childlike crayon drawing of a woman with long flowing hair and a kind smile. Next to her was a smaller figure, a girl, holding her hand. And between them, a third figure, a woman with a question mark over her face. My breath caught in my throat. It was a picture of Anna, of Lily, and of Clara. But Clara wasn't a person. She was a question, a mystery, a replacement. The drawing wasn't angry. It was sad. It was a child's desperate plea, a map to a feeling I hadn't been able to see. I sat on the floor of my daughter's room, surrounded by the wreckage of my new life and the fragile art of her broken heart, and I finally understood. This wasn't about jealousy. This was about fear. The fear of being forgotten. I carried the box downstairs, the weight of it now symbolic of the burden my daughter had been carrying alone. I found Lily in the kitchen, staring out the window, her shoulders hunched. She didn't turn when I entered. "I know, Dad," she said, her voice flat. "You found it." I placed the box on the table between us, the sound of the broken ceramic a final resonant note. "Why, Lily?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "Why would you do this?" She finally turned to look at me, and the mask of defiance was gone, replaced by a raw, aching vulnerability. For a long moment, she just stared at the box, then at me. "You don't get it," she said, her voice cracking. "You just don't get it." And then the dam broke. Every time I see one of her things, it's like she's here, Clara. And then I see the broken stuff, and it's like Mom is gone for good. And I can't let her go. So I break the new things, so that I can still see Mom, so that I remember her. I'm not trying to hurt Clara, Dad. I'm trying to save Mom. Her words hit me like a physical blow, knocking the air from my lungs. It was the most heartbreaking, selfless, and misguided act of love I had ever witnessed. She wasn't trying to destroy my happiness. She was trying to preserve hers. "Oh, baby," I breathed, the tears finally spilling over. "Oh, Lily, you don't have to choose. You could never, ever replace her, and she would never want you to." I pulled her into a fierce hug, holding her as she sobbed into my shoulder, the sound of her grief finally matching my own. "I'm so sorry," I whispered into her hair. "I'm so sorry I didn't see. I'm so sorry I didn't understand." I held her for a long time, rocking her gently, my mind racing with the depth of her pain and the complexity of her love. I had been so focused on my own healing, on moving forward, that I had completely failed to see the quiet, desperate way my daughter was trying to hold on to the past. The conversation with Clara was the hardest thing I've ever had to do. I sat her down, the box of broken things between us on the coffee table, a silent testament to my failure as a father and a partner. I explained everything, from Lily's silent grief to the heartbreaking logic behind her actions. Clara listened, her expression a mixture of shock, sadness, and ultimately profound understanding. When I was done, she reached out and took my hand. "David," she said, her voice soft, "thank you for telling me. I wish I had seen it. I just thought she was being difficult." "She's not," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "She's just lost." Clara nodded, a small, sad smile playing on her lips. "Can I talk to her, please?" I hesitated, then nodded. I found Lily in her room, still looking shell-shocked. "Clara is here," I said gently. "She wants to talk to you." Lily looked at me, her eyes wide with fear. I gave her a small, reassuring smile. "It's okay, baby. Go." Later, I watched from the doorway as Clara sat on the edge of Lily's bed. The two of them talking in hushed tones. I couldn't hear the words, but I saw Clara pull out a small, new music box from her bag, one that played the same melody as the old one. She handed it to Lily, who took it with trembling hands. Clara then pulled out a photograph of her own grandmother, the one who had given her the original box. "She was amazing," Clara said, her voice clear. "And she would have loved your mom. I bet they would have been best friends." Lily looked at the photo, then at Clara, a small, watery smile touching her lips. In that moment, something shifted. It wasn't a replacement. It was an addition, a new thread in the tapestry of our lives. That evening, the three of us sat on the sofa. Clara had shown Lily how to fix the music box, a simple glue job that Lily handled with surprising care. We didn't talk about the past or the broken things. We just sat in a comfortable, companionable silence, the soft tinkle-tinkle of the music box filling the room. It wasn't the same as before. The silence was no longer heavy with grief, but light, filled with a new, fragile hope. I looked at my daughter, her face relaxed for the first time in months, and at Clara, her arm around my daughter in a gesture of pure, uncomplicated love. I realized that healing wasn't about erasing the past, but about weaving it into the present. We weren't trying to replace the sun. We were learning to navigate by the light of 1,000 new stars. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like we might just find our way. The road ahead was still uncertain, but for the first time, it felt like a road worth walking. Together.